In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking about the Chicago Bears now that the NFL season is over. We're going to be talking pitchers and catchers reporting, and a little Blackhawks and Bulls. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The season is going on right now, so make sure you head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, how are we doing today on the first day without NFL football?
I am doing all right. Can't complain too much, though, getting ready for this impending snowstorm that's supposed to hit, followed by an Arctic blast. So these next 2 weeks should be fun.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. First, the other day, somebody was like, "Oh, we're gonna get the snow," and I was like, "I'm not seeing any snow in the forecast." But then I checked again, like over the weekend, and we're supposed to get like over 7 inches of snow, which is too much snow.
Yeah. And then think about it. You're going to have all that snow, and it's not going to melt because then you're going to get an Arctic blast on top of that.
Yeah, it'll be here till June.
Yeah, you'll be going in the park and there'll be that area of, like shade where like the trees are, like there's a wall of a building and there's just going to be that mountain of snow still there.
So my birthday is in early June, and I remember once when I was a kid, you know, when you go to like a grocery store or a mall and they the whole parking lot, they put the snow in one giant pile. That
Yep.
pile was still there on my birthday one year.
Was that in like 2011 when we had
No,
the,
that was the blizzard.
yeah.
This was when I was a kid. So
Okay.
this would have been like 83,
83.
somewhere around there. And it was just, I was like, it's my birthday and there's still snow out, and my birthday's in the summer.
Yeah, that's always funny when that happens. So, yeah, to everybody listening, stay safe out there. Be careful, because it's kind of a double whammy here. And, one thing I do worry about is power, obviously. That can have a weird effect, especially when it's really cold. And obviously, pipes freezing when it gets really cold. And on top of the fact that there's going to be mountains and mountains of snow on top of that, just be prepared. We're hunkering down, buy your food, have all your plowing stuff ready, and yeah, ride it out, I guess.
So we're recording this on Monday, and the Super Bowl was yesterday.
Hmm.
What takeaways do you have from the Super Bowl as it pertains to Chicago Bears?
Build in the trenches. My goodness. And I'm not just talking about the offensive line. The Eagles won the Super Bowl yesterday because their defensive line ate Patrick Mahomes and then spat out his bones. And they didn't even have to blitz. Without blitzing, they were able to just crush Pat Mahomes, and they crushed their spirits quickly and early and put them in such a deep hole to the point where they knew the Chiefs knew that game was over pretty quickly. I feel like there was no, hey, this play is going to go our way and then things are going to turn around. Their spirits were crushed early on. And shout out to Vic Fangio, the former Bears defensive coordinator, the man who helped coordinate that fantastic 2018 defense. He'll always go down as one of my favorite coach of any kind here in Chicago. He goes to Philly, and just absolutely knocks Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Matt Nagy's dick in the dirt. I mean, it goes to show how important that stuff still is. I mean, in the past few years, we've seen some good competitive Super Bowls because they were close back and forth. Obviously, last year's was an overtime, but I mean, if you want to see a blueprint of how to crush a team early, that's how you do it.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
there the Eagles.
to your point, you've made this point before. Defensive line important.
Yeah, the Eagles blitzed exactly 0 times and sacked Mahomes a bunch of times. They got pressure with the front four. And that's you had the same exact takeaway I did. Is Super Bowl takeaway for the Bears hammers home the need for offensive line and edge rushers. And that I mean it's if watching last season didn't hammer it home for Ryan Poles and the Super Bowl didn't hammer it home, then nothing is going to hammer it home because this watching the tape last year, watching those games, and then watching the Super Bowl, like it tells you everything. Like build in the trenches. We need offensive line help, and we need pass rushers.
Yeah, big time. Big time. And I think too, there's another lesson to be taken away here is look what happens. And I don't think this was talked about nearly enough. And we've talked about this before with Caleb Williams. Watching Jalen Hurts last night, he was named Super Bowl MVP and he played well. I still think the Super Bowl MVP should have been won by everybody on the defensive line of the Eagles. But one thing that stood out to me, at least last night, with Jalen Hurts is when he ran exactly how you and I have talked about. He didn't rush for 100+ yards. He didn't like light up those numbers, but in the second half, especially, he was very efficient and very smart with running the football himself. He'd get the snap, scan the field, and if that lane was there, he'd take off and get that first down. It was just continuing to pile on and on the Chiefs. So you ran out the clock and you scored more and you made a blowout an even bigger blowout. Again, it's not like he lit up the scorecard with rushing yards, but you saw several times when he rushed at the perfect time and was smart about it. That is something that we have seen glimpses of from Caleb Williams, and I think something to build upon for him in alone just passing and reading the field.
Yeah, I mean that is huge. Is he didn't do anything like there was no panicky runs. He's like, oh man, the play is not there. And there's a lane. I'm going. And he slid before he took contact. He already ran out of bounds. He knew where the first down mark was. It was a really efficient way of running for him. And he finished with, I mean, 72 yards is a pretty good number of runs or pretty good
It is
number of
pretty
yards.
good.
So 11 carries for 72 yards.
It's not like Lamar Jackson, though, or Justin Fields, where they're rushing for 100+. But yeah, it is still not shabby.
So another question after the game. Does yesterday's performance change your opinion about potential free agent guard Trey Smith and the Bears' possible pursuit of him?
No, but I think it's less about him. It's more of me thinking, like, I would want him on the Bears, don't get me wrong. But if Travis Kelce calls it quits, isn't that kind of right there your money for them to re-sign him?
But I mean, maybe he changes his mind, but I thought he said a couple weeks ago that he was planning to come back next year.
And he very well could. Um, I just wonder if something changes. I don't know. But in terms of him being on the Bears, it doesn't change my mind. I just wonder what's going to happen with that because I feel like if Travis Kelce does retire, they're going to use that money to re-sign him because he's going to make a lot of money. And I am at the point where I'm like, listen, You have the money to spend, you have the cap space. I still want him. And yes, it didn't look good yesterday at all for the Chiefs, really anywhere. Nobody really had a good game on the Chiefs except for the run defense that, stopped Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley was a non factor in that game, but everything else on the offensive side, everything was off. Mahomes was off, the line was off, they couldn't block, D Hop couldn't catch, everything was off. But that still doesn't overall change my mind of me wanting him on the Bears if there's a chance. I just don't know if that chance is going to be there.
I think had that game been close or the Chiefs would have won, I think it would have been more likely Trey Smith would be gone. But I think the way that game went down and how bad Mahomes got hit, uh, I think it's the Chiefs are going to realize they can't give up their best offensive lineman. I think they're going to find a way to get him under or in back next year, either uh, franchise tag or an extension. I can't see them letting him go. You would need to rebuild your whole offensive line, and I think you've got to have a centerpiece there.
Yeah, you're probably right. I don't feel like the chances of them re-signing or the Bears of signing him are overly high to your point. But we'll see. I'd still like him on the Bears if the opportunity was there, because I do think there's something to be said. Yeah, you can draft and you should draft, fresh young guys out of college, but it is kind of nice to have a guy like that who's already experienced at this level and can prove that he can do it at a high level.
It's one thing I also noticed about the Super Bowl and Patrick Mahomes getting sacked left and right is suddenly sacks were no longer a quarterback stat when it's Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah,
You notice
yeah,
that? It
yeah.
was
Kind of funny.
it's oh well he can't block for himself. And with Caleb Williams, it's well, Caleb Williams should at least make the one guy miss and he's got to get the ball out quicker. Like it's such a double. Why does everybody hate Caleb Williams? Why do people hate him? It drives me crazy.
Well, what gets me about the Caleb Williams stuff is the attacks on his character. He's a diva. He doesn't care. All this stuff that is just straight up not true. Now, are there some flaws that need to be worked out? Yes. Were there questions coming into the league? Yes, we had questions. Many people had questions. But some of the stuff is just ridiculous. I mean, when Drake May completes a deep pass, everyone loses their minds. And everyone's like, oh, look at him. He just balls, no excuses, unlike Caleb Williams. And then he finishes the game with like 100 passing yards and they lose 28-7. Like, okay, you're going to go gaga over that, but then go crazy about Caleb Williams being a diva or something. There's a lot of double standards here, and it's really, really annoying. And I'm going to say this too. It wasn't just the offensive line for the Chiefs yesterday. Like I pointed out earlier, Patrick Mahomes was bad yesterday.
Yeah.
He
Yep.
was terrible. And listen, the final numbers may show you 3 touchdown passes, over 200 passing yards. But guess what? That was all in garbage time. Literally all of it.
Oh yeah. I mean, until like the last couple minutes of the third quarter, he had not gone over the or past the 50-yard line. And boy, at one point he had like 30 some or 50 something yards passing, like
Yeah.
deep into the game. Like he had a bad game, like a
He had a
very
very
bad.
awful game. And what did we see that we
We,
see a lot of rookies do? He was tentative.
yeah. Yep. So it's almost like if you don't protect your quarterback, that he does bad things, even when he's not getting hit. Huh.
And,
Huh.
and like I said earlier, it looked like they were pretty defeated, even going into the second half. Because, like, in so many different occasions, we would say, oh, Mahomes is down, couple of scores going to the second half. This game's far from over, right? It looked over even before halftime. Because you can just tell they looked defeated and frustrated, and they didn't really have an answer. Like anything they were doing, they didn't have an answer for anything.
So here we are with the Bears. We've got a couple dates coming up. The franchise tag is due. The first day can be given is February 18th, and then all franchise tags have to be applied or removed by March 4th. So you got that February 18th through March 4th window for franchise tags. The legal tampering period starts on March 10th. So we are 1 month away from free agency starting. The combine is 227 to March 2nd. So we're like a little over 2 weeks away, or sorry, yeah, 2 weeks away from the combine. And then the NFL draft starts April 24th. So we are starting to get right in the thick of things of the NFL offseason. So 73 days before the NFL draft. And I was looking, The Athletic listed top targets for certain teams based on where their draft position was and who would be available. And unsurprising, at the number 10 pick, they listed 8 players, and 7 of the 8 of them were either offensive linemen or defensive linemen. So I feel like the Athletic is aware of what the Bears' needs are. And then
Yeah.
with the 39 and 41 pick, they listed 12 players that could be potential Bears targets. 6 of them were offensive linemen, 4 of them were edge rushers, and 2 of them were running backs.
Again, common
Yeah.
theme here.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, we'll see. I hate when you're just like, when people are like, oh, the Bears should just spend their first 3 picks on offensive linemen no matter what. I mean, if you're not going to reach for guys, so, and you got to look at how things play out and the other needs you have. But I'm still, we'll see how the board starts playing out as we get closer to the draft and the combine and the pro days happen. But I just find it really hard based on this draft to not want to go edge rusher in that first round.
I
I
mean,
know.
listen, it's a big area of need.
I mean, my 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 dream would be Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State, but he's going top 3. I mean, if he doesn't go top 3, then you're going to see me doing the Fred Sanford. Here I come, Elizabeth. It's the big one. Like I will be dead of shock. But the more realistic ones, I really like Will Campbell, and I know it's funny because any criticism you read of him, all comes down to they don't think he can play tackle in the league. And I totally agree with that. His arms are too short to be a good tackle. Maybe an average tackle, but I think he will be an absolute stud guard. It's this he's the new Peter Skoronski. And Peter Skoronski said the same thing. It's like people are, what are you talking about? He was a great tackle in college. No, he's a guard in the NFL, but he's going to be a really good guard. It's not shitting on that. You need good guards. Will Campbell is going to be a really good guard. You can plug him in day one, and I would love for him to fall to the Bears, but I don't think he will. I think somebody's going to snake him, and I worry that somebody's going to try to do like what they did to Mekhi Becton, like the Jets. Same thing. They were like, well, we're going to make him a tackle, and he failed miserably, and then he goes to the Eagles and then turns into a stud as a guard. Hopefully somebody smart enough to do that with Will Campbell right off the bat. I like Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall. Jalen Walker, the edge rusher from Georgia. And I really like Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan. I don't think defensive tackle is our greatest need because if Billings is healthy and Jervon Dexter is really, I mean, he is essentially Jalen Carter. Stats, very, very similar stats. Um, I think we've got a good one there. And if Andrew Billings is healthy, I think we're okay at defensive tackle. We can need depth, but I'm not I'm not drafting depth in the first round. But if the Bears get if Mason Graham falls to them, like he is arguably one of the top three best players in this draft. And if he falls to 10, you run to the podium because you can put him anywhere on that defensive line and he's going to play well. He is just like, you know, he could be Aaron Donald. And you find a place to play that guy. On those pass rush situations, you you can put him on the edge if you need to. He's so good.
Think there's a scenario where that happens?
I keep looking at mocks and it's one of those things that those two quarterbacks are going to go top 10. Not because they deserve it, but because people need quarterbacks.
Yeah, not the greatest draft for him.
No, I mean you never know how these things play out, but it does not look very good. But they're at least two of them are going to go in the top 10. Um, Travis Hunter is going to go right away. Abdul Carter is going to go right away. Will Campbell, I think, is going to go pretty darn early. Um, so then you start looking and you're like, all right, well somebody's got to fall. And I've seen a ton of mocks so far that seem legitimate. I mean, granted it's Super Bowl weekend, but legitimately it looks like Mason Graham could very well fall to the Bears. If not, it's going to be really close. I mean, it might be one of the situations like Aaron Donald where falls to the pick right before the Bears.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, with the combine coming up and free agency coming up, obviously things are going to shift. You're going to see, who impresses in the combine, whose stocks rise, whose stocks fall. And then obviously you're going to see the positions of what teams are going to put themselves in with free agency. We'll see what holes they plug, what they do. So obviously a lot can change between now and the draft, but I think it's at least worth keeping an eye on, a lot of these key players that could potentially be around where the Bears are picking, whether it's the first round or the second round, because let's be real, we know the Bears are going to be going after these certain types of players. And, I would say, quote, in order of importance, one is offensive line, two is defensive line, and any other depth pieces you can get. But, you might be drafting a receiver too later on, because we talked about this before. You're gonna need to shore up some depth, I think, especially if Keenan Allen doesn't come back. So that's gonna be interesting to monitor. But I'm not looking for them to draft a big time tight end. You have Cole Kmet. I'm obviously not going to draft a big time quarterback. You're not going to be probably drafting much in terms, at least tie with the cornerback position. But yeah, I mean, there's still plenty of areas where the Bears need to improve, especially in the trenches. So keep an eye on these guys. I'm curious to see what the combine looks like. And I know the combine isn't the be all end all, but that is where we see stocks rise and fall for some of these guys.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, the Bears need desperate help on the offensive line. But the nice part is, like I keep saying, is we've got one tackle spot locked up, and the other one, Braxton Jones, when he's healthy, is an average NFL left tackle. Like he's not going to light the world on fire, but he's not going to be a total flop either. And I think that puts you in a position where, like, guards, you can get really good guards later on. It's hard to find really good tackles later on. They happen, but usually the stud ones go pretty early, or you find them later in the draft and they, just develop. But it's it's he's good enough where you can be like, all right, we're going to focus on the interior, and you can use second, third round picks and free agency to fill the guard center guard gap and ride it out another year with Braxton Jones. Like, you can totally do that. And that's a good position to be in, because you're not forced to be like, all right, number 10, we are pigeonholed at offensive lineman. I mean, if somebody that's absolutely a stud like Will Campbell falls, you're like, okay, then yeah, I'm not going to pass on that. But at least when it's guard center guard that you need, it still gives you that flexibility of, yeah, if there's a really, really good offensive lineman, like Josh Simmons out of Ohio State or something, you can totally consider him. Or you can still go edge rusher and not feel like you're behind the eight ball. And that's so it's for a team that needs a lot of offensive line help. It's playing out not the worst way.
Right.
And then just two other tidbits I want to say with the Bears, because there's not a lot going on, is Virginia died.
Yes, yes, she did. 102 years old.
And
I
I don't want
know
to, talk about it like, oh, it's super sad, because I mean, yeah, it's like nobody wants to. It's not a happy occasion that somebody dies, but she lived to be 102. That's a
very
full
few
life.
people can
Yeah,
say that.
that woman lived a full life. She was alive for every single Bears game ever, except for 36 of them.
Yeah. And I mean, she was pretty much alive the entire span of the NFL. That's pretty crazy. And just looking at Virginia McCaskey and her legacy in the game, obviously, when you look at it from a certain perspective, more than just, hey, the longevity, look at that. But, you know, women in sports is a very important thing. And she was a owner for what, since was it 83 when Hallis died?
I believe 80.
82, 83 around there.
When did he die? It's
I
somewhere around there.
because I think Muggs was 79.
Yeah.
So, she's been, not only alive for so long, but she's been in that position as the principal owner for so long. And, you know, there are plenty of other people out there that have been, owning a team for a long time. But, you look at Virginia, she really stands out. And, especially among football, like her and Sheila Ford and, some of these other people that have been around a long time, the Davis family. But I mean, this whole time, she's been a part of this, and so few people can they were alive when the NFL didn't even have the forward pass. Like she was the forward pass wasn't even a thing.
George Hallis died on Halloween 1983.
83. Yeah, that's what I
83.
thought.
83.
We're getting good use of that. Uh, um, you know, you and I, we've had our gripes with the McCaskies big time, and it's warranted. The ownership has been terrible over the past few decades. The thing is, I can look at the past few decades and say it really mainly falls on like Michael and George, especially George. He's been the chairman since 2011, and under his reign, it's been a joke. It's been an absolute joke. And, Virginia was not the one in there doing the interviews with the coaches, the mock press conferences, the hiring of Ernie Accorsi and Bill Polian. That wasn't Virginia. And the passing of Virginia right now, the main question is, what's the future going to be like for the team? Are they going to have to sell stakes? There is going to be a tax coming here. How is that all going to work? But what we can say right now, in full honesty, is her passing doesn't really change what's going to happen football wise because Ben Johnson's our coach. Ryan Poles is going to be your GM for better or for worse, aligned with Ben Johnson. If that path is set, that hasn't changed with the passing of Virginia. Um, I don't even know how involved she was in board meetings at this point. My guess is probably not very much, but it is going to be something next year. It's going to be the first time Virginia hasn't been part of a Bears season in anybody's lifetimes. And this is a woman who probably had her obituary written decades ago. I mean, wasn't it they were saying with Jimmy Carter that the guy who wrote his obit had passed before Jimmy Carter?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, yeah. And Jimmy Carter was like around the same age, right? He was 100 and something. Same with
I
Virginia.
think he was 100 and even.
Yeah. So, I mean, God bless her for living a century. Like truly, it's incredible. And it was nice that they did a tribute at the Super Bowl. You saw virtually every NFL team tweet out a tribute because, you know, her father was the founder of the NFL. George Halas is the grandfather of the NFL. And the fact that there was still a living direct connection to him and the conception of the NFL all these years was pretty amazing. So you got to give her that. Rest in peace, Mama Bear. George, keep your hands away from football. Let Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles and everybody else handle that. And continue to listen to Kevin Warren on these types of things and own the team, ride your scooter, draw with your purple crayons.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, you know, uh the Bears are worth a lot of money, and there is an estate tax for something worth that kind of money. How do the Bears pay that? Um, and that they had to have a plan for it because she's 102. It would be the stupidest thing ever if you didn't plan for a person that was in a triple digits in age for what happens in their death. Like if you don't, that's just stupid. Um, but I wonder if they will have to sell a portion of the team to pay that off.
I mean, the will's probably, and the plan has probably been in place for a while now, right? You would think.
Yeah. So I mean, that was the reason that the Bears sold part of the team to Pat Ryan and was it McKenna. Um, because there was when George Halas died, they owed a bunch of taxes on that.
Yeah.
Um,
And Pat Ryan's up there too, isn't he?
Pat Ryan is like 88, 87. He's like Jerry's age.
Yeah, right, right. So he's no spring chicken either.
Um, but I mean, the Ryans are worth like $13 billion. I wonder if they would consider buying the full franchise from the Bears.
So,
I mean, he's got right of first refusal for any sale.
right. I Do you think they would sell a majority of the McCaskey family?
I don't know how the inheritance is structured. I mean, if like Virginia has how many kids left?
Well, she had 11 kids, right?
Yeah.
She had great great grandchildren.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
So it depends on how it's divided up. If all of her children get a piece, I mean, only one of them's dead, right?
I think so. I mean, my question is, who's really involved? Because it feels like very few actually are. Like, George is the main owner now, right? Wouldn't it be him?
I mean, I'm assuming that he's going to be the NFL is going to recognize him as like the
Principal owner.
the principal of the team. That's my assumption. But I don't know if he actually will own all of it or if he is the controlling partner. Like he controls those shares, but they belong to his siblings and the grandkids or whoever.
Yeah, it's because I mean, because you have members on the board, right? And when they fired, it was Michael McCaskey, right? That they fired before George in 2011.
Yeah.
Chicago Bears board. Because, okay, so obviously on the board, you have George, you have Kevin Warren. I know there are several McCaskey siblings. So Brian McCaskey, Patrick McCaskey, Ed McCaskey. Those are the other McCaskeys that are on the board. And then there's Pat Ryan and Kevin Warren. Now, this board of directors on the website hasn't been updated yet because Virginia is still listed here. But just looking at the McCaskey names that are still on the board, George, Patrick, Brian, Ed. So Michael's not even involved. I mean, I'm sure he's got a stake in the team, but um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly how it's going to all play out.
Yeah. Um, I'm reading here from, I don't know how reliable that is. Uh, I don't know if Virginia owned all of that or if she was the controlling person.
So I'm looking
Um,
at the website, and this is interesting. So board of directors has Virginia McCaskey listed as just member, and then George is the chairman. Now I look at ownership and executives below that. Virginia's not on this list. The top here is George as the chairman, followed by Kevin Warren as president CEO, Ted Cruz advisor, Liz Geist EVP, Karen Murphy, sorry, Tanisha Wade, Krista Whitaker, Mecca White Morris, Dana Treason, Scott Hagel, Paul Nerderer, I don't know who that is, Corey Ruff, Lee Twirling, and then is listed as two vice presidents is Brian McCaskey and Patrick McCaskey. And then you have other members, Britt Bending, Colleen Collins, Jocelyn, Mai Davis, Autumn Swindell. So you have all these ownerships and executives, but um, you know, George is most likely got to be the principal owner, right? Like it wouldn't be anybody else. There's got to be a principal owner, right?
I,
You
I,
would
I
think,
I think there has to be by NFL rules.
except the Packers, but that they're
Yeah.
grandfathered in. So
Um, this is according to a 2013 Tribune report, Chicago Tribune. Virginia McCaskey controlled about 80% of Bears stock owned by her and her 11 children, nine of whom remain alive, uh, including four sons who serve on the team's board of directors. So she didn't own the 80%. Um, she was the controlling party. The remaining 20% was owned by Chicagoans Patrick Ryan and the late Andrew McKenna, who died in 2023. The franchise was structured to avoid estate tax ramifications that can force heirs to sell family owned teams. In one of her last public comments on the issue, McCaskey expressed confidence the Bears would stay in the family. I certainly hope so. We've been working on that for a long time, she said. We're the recipients of a tremendous legacy. I use the word custodian, and we want to pass it on the best way we can.
also, quick correction here. I talked about Michael McCaskey. I totally forgot he died a few years ago.
He did, but he was removed first. Yeah.
He was fully removed and then he passed away.
Okay. I thought Sue died, but um, so
Well, yeah, you
uh,
said nine of which were
yeah. So
so two did. Yeah,
two
it
are
was
gone.
Michael and I don't know who the other one was. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So Virginia, rest in peace, and it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But I'm assuming that it becomes George. The other news, former Bears head coach Dick Duran died.
Yeah, that was a bit of a shock. I didn't really hear much of him recently. He's been kind of out of the spotlight. So, like, when I saw he died, I'm like, was he sick for a while? I didn't really know what happened. But Dick Duran was the first Bears coach I could remember in my lifetime. Remembering towards the end, he obviously had, I was like 6 or 7 years old in 2001 when they had that division winning year under Dick Duran. Obviously, the era as a whole wasn't spectacular, but it was that era that brought in Brian Urlacher, and you started to build some of that defensive core that would be taken over by Lovie Smith. Obviously, you had like Mike Brown in there, and you had some good players, on those teams. But um, what I hear all the time about Dick Duran was how just nice and great of a guy he was. Like everybody who knew him said he was just the nicest guy and he was great to talk to. So I know there's a lot of people out there who personally knew him or worked with him that were pretty upset to hear of his passing, and I can understand why. He seemed like a really good dude.
Yeah, so rest in peace, Dick Duran. Where do you want to go from here?
Well, we got spring training ramping up.
Yeah. So Cubs pitchers and catchers reported on Super Bowl Sunday.
They did, and we did hear that Shota Imanaga is indeed going to pitch against the Dodgers in Japan one of those games. That's going to be really cool homecoming for him. The thing that's surrounding right now at Cubs camp is the whole Alex Bregman thing. And the longer this is going, the more I'm just saying, just sign somewhere. No matter where, let's just be done with this so everybody can move on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have this feeling that he is going to go to the Red Sox. I think the Cubs that has sailed, and the fact that Craig Counsell came out yesterday and they were asking about third base, and he said Matt Shaw is going to get first crack at it. I just makes me feel like Bregman is has that ship has sailed.
I'm not quite ready to go there yet. I just don't know if it's going to happen. Um, but there is still a possibility. Because there was a report that came out an hour or so ago saying how the Cubs, and this is through Ken Rosenthal, could be looking to pivot to Justin Turner as kind of a backup option. Probably more as a first baseman DH at this point. But some people are leverage that's actually going to give you, but you know, I think there's still a possibility. But let's just say at this time last week, I was actually almost expecting the Cubs to land Bregman, and now I'm not as sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if he went to a Red Sox. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean that's what I think. I mean everything I'm reading says that they're the hope. I mean the it seems like he won't go back to the Astros. Um, so I'm guessing it's the Red Sox. I just don't think it's going to be the Cubs. And it's essentially, I mean, here's the reality then. The Cubs are giving the hot corner to a 23-year-old with 35 AAA games under his belt.
Right. What if that doesn't work or he's not ready?
Yeah,
I mean,
I
as
mean,
of right now, your backup plan is John Birdie or Vidal Brujan.
yeah, you don't. I mean, this this is a bad backup plan. You do not have a safety net. I mean, what if even it looks good, but he gets hurt, like a significant injury? Like you don't have a backup plan.
And I think that you can live with a small sample of like a John Birdie. Like a John Birdie was a decent ball player through much of his career. He's not a power hitter, but he's really freaking fast and he's got a good OBP. For a little while, you can live with it. I don't want another extended period of time where the Cubs third baseman has no power. We've watched it with several years with Miles Mastroboni and Nick Madrigal. The only time you had power at third base is when you would have your Patrick Wisdom starts over there. But I just, the thing is, if it's Bregman or Shaw, both those guys, whether it's potential or established, those are power hitters. You need power production from your third base side. If you have to go a few days where Matt Shaw is on the 10-day DL and you have to put in John Birdie there, okay, fine, you can live with that. But for an extended time, I'd really ideally have a power hitter at that position.
Absolutely, 100%. And so I hope this is all smoke and Bregman is a reality. And it's not necessarily like, oh man, if you don't get Bregman, that's the end of the world. It's not that, Bregman is Shohei Ohtani, but he's a really good baseball player. And he's probably the best free agent that's still available. And he plays a position that you need help with.
Right. And I think that there's something to be said about this position. Like, it's one thing to say, and I don't want to diminish everything about this position because it does have importance, but it's one thing to maybe experiment around with like a second base or a right field, but the hot corner is one of the premier positions in baseball. Really, both corner infield spots. Like, having an elite first and third baseman is pretty damn important. And you look at so many great teams, they all had those.
Yeah,
Right?
it's yeah, I mean, and here's the thing is, what if Bregman what if Bregman has a good year and Shaw looks like a legit dude? Are you blocking him? No. Here's why. You could trade Bregman. Or what are the odds that Nico Horner is going to be healthy all year? Or you could rotate him in through third base, shortstop, second base, and he could still play. He could still play, 3 days a week, and everybody is rotating through. Um, you know, Bregman could play DH when inevitably Suzuki gets hurt. Like, there's room to make this work. You have to be, and it's a much better spot to be in trying to find somebody playing time than going, oh shit, where are we going to get any power in our lineup now that our third baseman's hurt?
Right, right. And I mean, you look at the Cubs lineup as it's constructed now, and you say, okay, we talk about the sources of power. We've wanted a 30 plus home run hitter for a while now. Kyle Tucker can do that. So that's good. You have several guys that could hit between 20 and 25. You got Suzuki, you got Happ, you got Dansby Swanson, and Michael Busch. Okay, that's cool. Matt Shaw, who knows? Hasn't played in the majors yet. He could hit 5, he could get 10. I don't see Matt Shaw being like a much higher than a 20 plus home run guy. I could be wrong, but he strikes me more as a gap to gap inside the park power type guy where you're, bouncing doubles off the wall rather than hitting 30 plus home runs. But, ideally you'd like to have Thunder there. So you do have power. My big thing with the Cubs is, and Kyle Tucker helped fix this to my point, but it'd be nice to have a guy where you're like, that's 35 home runs right there, 35 to 40. And I think Kyle Tucker's ceiling is like a 30, 33 type. You don't have any 40 plus type guys. You don't have a Juan Soto or a Shohei Ohtani or an Aaron Judge or a Giancarlo Stanton or a Pete Alonso that are capable of that kind of thing. But at least you do have guys that can hit some home runs collectively.
Yeah, right. Um, let's see. We already have our first potential injury. One day in, uh, Assad is going in for an MRI, which is not ideal.
No, you don't like to hear that, but at least you brought in some pitching depth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the pitching depth. I don't hate it. I just don't love it.
Yeah, I mean, I really wish they would have gotten another top three starter. I'm not very big on Colin Ray and Matthew Boyd, but uh, yeah, that's
I
if
mean,
Colin Ray can just be a decent enough five if you need be, okay.
I mean, my hope is that one of the young pitchers suddenly goes, "Oh yeah, we're really good," and then Colin Ray can be that number six pitcher, that spot starter slash give guys an extra day of rest guy,
Right.
or or flip him at the deadline for something else guy.
Yeah, either or. Um, I look at how good the starting pitching was for us last year, and I do legitimately wonder, are we going to get that this year? And you know what? More and more articles have been coming out regarding, and I wrote one kind of about this too a month or so back, but there are people that are going really in depth into the data and the actual measurement of it. We cannot deny, as much as we roll our eyes at Jed Hoyer for saying it, we cannot deny that Wrigley Field was a very pitcher friendly ballpark last year. Every ounce of data supports it. You didn't even need the data. You just had to sit and watch the games. It doesn't take a computer or a graphic for someone to sit and watch a game and say regularly, like we did last year, how the hell did that ball not go out? Whether it was for us or for the other team.
Wrigley Field is an anomaly because nothing can change physically about the ballpark, and sometimes it's a pitcher's park, sometimes it's a hitter's park.
And not only that, but like to the extreme. Like it is even more hitter friendly than Coors Field on some days when that wind is blowing in. Or it's even more pitcher friendly than the gaps at Comerica Park in Detroit. It's that extreme. And we saw so much of that pitcher friendly extreme last year. And one thing that I did write about for Cubby's Crib a few weeks back, this staff tends to give up bombs. Shota Imanaga, for as good as he is, everybody knew his Achilles heel was home runs. Jameson Tyone, ever since he had, I think it was Tommy John, he missed a full year. He's been good overall, but he's given up a lot more home runs over the past few years. Matthew Boyd has been known for giving up home runs. Colin Ray's been. You got a lot of fly ball pitchers here outside of Justin Steele. Justin Steele is the one you don't. He's the one who does a remarkable job at keeping the ball in the ballpark. Whereas a lot of these other guys, the good news is that a lot of these guys don't walk a lot of people and they have pretty good whips. So if you're giving up like Shota Imanaga last year, he gave up like 27 home runs, but he didn't walk guys. He didn't put a lot of guys on base. So a lot of those home runs were solo shots, and you can live with that. But if the winds literally change, if the winds change, that will make an impact because you have a staff with a number of fly ball pitchers here.
Yeah, it would be nice to have some bat missers or some more ground ball hitters or pitchers with the fielding that the middle infield they have.
Right, because I mean, I've been the big advocate for the bat misser, but if you're not going to get the bat misser, get the sinker, pound the ball on the ground type guy. I just Imanaga's a fly ball pitcher. Jameson Tyone's a fly ball pitcher. Colin Ray's a fly ball pitcher. Last year it worked out great, but this year we won't know. We have no control over the weather, and you have a great defense behind you. But if those balls are going over the wall, it's not going to do you any good.
No.
I'm not saying the staff is bad. I'm not saying it's going to flip a 180. It's going to be terrible compared to last year. I just think you can look at last year's starting rotation and really, really wish you took advantage of how good it was, because I think Shota Imanaga is still going to be very good. I don't know if he's going to be sub 3 ERA good. I don't know if Jameson Tyone is going to be, what was he, a 3.2 ERA? He's probably closer to a 3.7, 3.8, 3.9, which is fine, but I feel like you're missing one more dude in that rotation. And when I mean dude, I mean dude.
So that leads me to a question. Is Ben Brown a starter or is he a reliever?
I think the jury's out on that. I think he's got the potential to be a starter. That injury last year was so freaking bizarre. I just don't know what the effects are of that injury. I would say my guess right now is get back into the game as a reliever, maybe work back to a starter, but I don't know. Maybe things go a little differently.
I'm rooting for starter. I'm really rooting for him. Not that there's anything wrong with being a reliever, but I think it would be great for the Cubs if he was a starter. You could leave some of those other back end starting pitchers as your long relievers, your middle relievers, and give you depth that way.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be nice to have another young starter that had upside rather than a veteran that is who he is.
Right.
Next question is, when is Nico going to be ready to play?
Well, he is on the field working out. So, excuse me, that's a good sign. A lot of people are saying he's not going to be ready for opening day yet. So I'm sure that still might be the case for now. Who knows? Things can change, but hopefully within a few weeks to a month, if he's still on the team, obviously, barring anything big, you would hope that he could be back fairly soon after opening day. But it seems like he's on a good track.
Because spring training is not that long.
No, it's not.
We're pitchers and catchers reported yesterday, and the Cubs' first game is in like 10 days.
Yeah, I'm dreading that so much.
And then opening day for the Cubs is in a little over a month. It's a month and a week. March 18th. So, we're not that far away. And, you hope, if Nico's not going to be healthy to start this season, man, it really makes you don't want to double down on Bregman, because then you could just be like, all right, Matt Shaw, you're our second baseman for the first couple weeks here.
Right. Yeah, and then you have another option at third, or you keep Shaw at third and you have former White Sox and area legend Nicky Lopez.
Oh, Nicky Lopez. And the White Sox, they had the biggest year-over-year payroll reduction out of any of the 30 baseball teams.
Congrats, Jerry.
Good job, Jerry. Here's your butterscotch pudding snack.
Yeah.
He's just eating pureed prunes.
Ew.
and,
Ew.
And the blood of small children. It keeps me young. Jerry Ferratu.
God, that sounds like a Photoshop.
Somebody needs to make that's like AI there. That's the perfect use for AI.
Oh God. Jerry Sveratu.
Reinsdorf look like Nosferatu.
Oh God.
Except except he's kept alive by draining the soul out of the White Sox.
Speaking of Jerry, I think we have to address a big elephant in the room in Chicago sports. The absolute massive joke that are the Chicago Bulls.
What are they doing?
Did you hear that press conference from AK?
It was just gibberish, and there's no semblance of a plan there.
They keep kicking this can down the road every year. Well, we'll see over the last few months and see what happens. Like you're still talking about making the playoffs after you traded your biggest guy.
And the worst part is well, there's two paths you can take. You could either go with a couple of superstars or a roster full of just good players. We're going to go that
No,
route. No, when that hasn't worked in a long time. You need
it,
superstars.
the Bulls and AK are so lucky that the Mavericks did what they did, or else they would be on a much higher national hot seat. They are so lucky for that.
So I was reading an opinion about the Mavericks trade of Luca. And I don't know if it's true, but it sounded reasonable enough. Not not from a sports perspective, from a business perspective. So the lady who bought the Mavs from Mark Cuban got her money apparently through casinos. She's a big casino person. And her goal was to open a big casino with a new basketball stadium for the Mavericks in Dallas. She was told she can't. So, as leverage, she was trying to use leverage, didn't work. They said, she's like, well, I'll move the team. And they're like, you're not going to move the team. They're really popular. They were just in the NBA finals. So she's like, okay, we're going to trade our best player and basically pull a major league and force that team to Vegas. That
That
is,
sounds awful.
and I don't know if it's true or not, but it sounds awfully awful, but plausible. And if that's the case, man, the like it just such a slap in the face to the fans. Mavericks fans, I feel bad for you. You got done dirty.
Yeah, I'll say. And boy, did they did they voice their displeasure or what? Because they were outside protesting and spray painting and holding up signs, and they had to hire extra security there, and they finally had their first home game since the trade on Saturday. And lo and behold, AD comes out guns ablazing. The place is going nuts. Everything is actually looking pretty good. I think they set like a franchise record for blocks that game. But then lo and behold, what happens to Anthony Davis?
Hurt.
Hurt. And guess what? He's going to be out several weeks.
Fitting.
It's just like, eh, what would be more fitting than having that happen at the first home game since the trade?
Oh man, it's just such a slap in the face to those poor fans.
I know.
But
Brutal.
so you're the Bulls and you trade away Zach. Um, I don't agree with it, but you're stuck in limbo. I mean, Jerry's not going to spend. He's not going to go into that luxury tax to spend and bring in somebody. He's not going to do it.
No.
And so we were like, okay, well then how are we going to get good players? they're going to just get bad, and then you're going to cross your fingers that you get a good player. And they might have what last year with Matas. He's looking good, and
He is.
and um but you've got to give him help, and you've got to build around him. And are they going to do that? You try to pick a path, but then your path is let's trade our best player and then sign the guy that's been injured for the last 2 years to a 2 year extension and not trade Vooch.
And you're stuck with Patrick Williams.
Yeah, and out of all the players the Bulls let go too soon that developed somewhere else, they signed Patrick Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And just he's never going to figure it out. He's just not going to figure it out. We talked about, oh, he's only 19 years old. Oh, he's only 20 years old. Oh, he's only 21 years old. Like, at some point,
Projects projects can work if you have the right people to develop them, but do the Bulls have the right people?
I mean, I don't think they do, but it's also I don't think Pat Williams is the guy either.
I don't think so either. I mean, I think that in another setting, another universe, you draft a Patrick Williams later on, you develop him with the right system, and he becomes a solid part of a team, but not like a centerpiece or anything.
Yeah, and he makes a lot of money. They paid him a lot of money.
Yep. I mean, like I said last week, my emotional investment in this team is completely gone. I just I don't care.
It's hard to care.
And you know what? The United Center will still get their fans there, and I think a lot of people are very apathetic towards the team, but there'll still be a draw because the experience of a Bulls game is always top tier. Like that's one thing you could always count on going to the United Center for a Bulls game. You're gonna have a great experience no matter what the product on the court is. But in terms of emotional investment, I know for a fact that you and I are not the only ones having a hard time investing in this team. And it's a shame. You have one of the biggest fan bases in the game. You're one of the biggest brands in the game because of what Jordan did for you. And you're spoiling that by being directionless in purgatory and with no seeming way out. Because you're not bad enough to get your odds for a lottery pick very good. You would need a miracle.
Yeah, yeah, you do. And this was supposed to be a strong draft class, and it's starting to look less and less strong. Um, so I don't know. I don't know. And it's you at least now guaranteed to have your first round pick. Um, but
You basically have to win the lottery to get flagged to really feel like you have an impact, right? Or at least a top three pick.
I mean, that's been kind of the last several years. You got to get that top three.
Yep.
And the Bulls in a year they absolutely had to get a top three, got number four, and they got
Yep.
Patrick Williams.
I just wonder, we all those years of Jordan and Pippen, did we just have to pay for the next quarter century?
I feel like we did.
Oh, here was one little stroke of fate getting Derrick Rose. Oh, by the way, he's gonna tear his ACL in a playoff game. Ugh.
And then
Sucks for people like me who weren't old enough to experience the Jordan Bulls.
you missed out.
I know. I know. I know.
And then we've got the Blackhawks who are on a 2 week break and then come back. And the NHL trade deadline will be shortly after their break is over. Um, that Florida loss was really embarrassing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Um, And I want to tell you, so right now, Luke Richardson, his record when he was still uh coach of this team was 8-16-2. Do you know what Anders Sorensen record is so far?
Is it like similar?
9-15-4. It is not much better.
No. I will say this though, they're scoring more.
They are, and Bedard looks a lot better
Y-
under
yes, he
under
does.
Sorensen.
And I do like seeing some of the steps that are being taken from Reichel and Frank Nazar. It's not lighting up the score sheet per se, but if you're following the games, you do see some steps being taken. So really, that's what you have to look at this point. Obviously, they had a great night the other night at home against the Nashville Predators. Lost a heartbreaker in the shootout to the Blues, but I mean, one of the reasons too you're playing better is Ryan Donato is just having himself a year.
He really is. And my concern is they're going to try to trade him rather than have him be a part of the team.
Right. And I think, sure, you can make the argument he's probably having a career year, but even if he doesn't play quite as good going forward, I think there's value of having him on a team because if you're trading Donato now, yeah, okay, you can say you're getting, taking advantage while his value is high. But even so, like, weigh the value there. Is trading him away for like a second or third round pick really going to pay dividends when you're trying to take a step forward?
I mean, I know he's not a kid, but he's also still in his 20s.
Yeah,
He's
he's
a,
not 35 or anything.
yeah, I mean, you can still keep him around and help him make your team better. Like you need players like that, and he's playing really well. And you're right. This may be the best he ever plays in the NHL, but it also might be he figured things out and this is who he is.
Yeah, I mean, if he's the kind of guy that's going to give you solid production, and if you make your team better, and you have dare I say, a contending team within a year or so, and he's kind of like your third line depth type contributor, you'll take that at a similar production rate, assuming everyone else above him is better and more established.
Yeah, and he doesn't make that much money. I mean, he's making $2 million a year.
Oh yeah, he's cheap. He's right now he's a terrific value. I believe he's a restricted free agent coming up.
No, he's got next year he's under contract still.
Okay, he is.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So they signed a 2 year, $4 million.
Okay. I
Oh
don't
wait,
know
no, no,
why I
I'm
thought
wrong. I'm sorry. I'm wrong. He is an unrestricted free agent.
that's
Last year was
yeah,
the
that's
first
what I
year.
thought. Okay.
Um, yeah. So he is an unrestricted. So, ooh, he's gonna cost. But it's not like you don't have the money.
Yeah, yeah, plenty of it.
Landon Slaggert has played well.
Yes, he has. And he got into a little scrap the other night, which was cool.
He did. It was nice to see.
Yeah.
Um, but my hope is that this 2 week break is going to help out Tyler Bertuzzi. I think he needs it. He's been super inconsistent this year.
Yes. Because he's had stretches where he's looked great, but lately he's been kind of MIA.
Yeah. So I'm hoping this break, if it heals up, if it's something ailing him or gets his mind right again, I'm just hoping this time off does something good for him.
Right. We'll reset.
And then Connor Bedard is, I think, the Caleb Williams of the NHL, where he's getting hated on for no reason.
So, I don't know if you saw, but now I write for Shy City Sports, and I do work I cover the Blackhawks for Shy City Sports. And one of the things I wrote about the other day was heard about him and the Paul Bissonnette thing, right, on the TNT broadcast against the Oilers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, he does this breakdown of Connor Bedard on the ice. We all know that Connor Bedard still has a lot of growing to do, like Caleb Williams has a lot of growing to do. He's a 19-year-old kid on a terrible team. And I think that, you identify things that he needs to do better. That's all fine. The analysis was fine, but when you kind of mock him by saying that's pond hockey, that's where the disconnect comes from. Like, you can be analytical and critical of certain things where he needs to get better on. But, saying, the Blackhawks are going to continue to struggle if Connor Bedard does this, putting so much on a 19-year-old kid on a terrible team and using the terms pond hockey to describe it, that's borderline insulting. And that's where the disconnect comes from.
Yeah, it is disrespectful. And, the national media, it's nice to have national games, but when the face of the team that's not playing well just gets hammered by, and sports fans, they're super judgmental. They make snap decisions and then they stick with it.
Right.
And well, Connor Bedard is bad. No, he's not. Like there's things that he needs to improve on, and everybody knows that. What 19-year-old that played in the NHL didn't have something to improve on? But he's a really good player, and he's getting better. Like clearly he's getting better.
Yes.
And like it just drives me nuts because now that's it. That's it's the Caleb Williams thing. Caleb Williams is a bust in the eyes of a lot of Twitter. You're like, you know, other than his team playing bad while a the Reds or the Washington football team Commanders quarterback their team played really well. Look at the stats. They're very similar quarterbacks, very similar stats, but one is a bust and one is a future Hall of Famer. And that's the way that the league has made up their mind. And with the NHL, it's Macklin Celebrini is amazing, is going to be the next face of the league, and Connor Bedard stinks. And you're like, how would it? I mean, I think they're both going to be exceptional players.
I think so too. Yeah, absolutely.
It's
But
like
I think I do think that national media does this sort of thing oftentimes just to stir the pot, right?
but then people buy into it. They're just like, oh, well, somebody said it, so I'm going to say it too.
But of course. But do they care as long as they're getting the ratings? No.
Yeah, it just drives me crazy. And it's one of those things like, all right, well, fine. If you're going to make a dumb, uneducated opinion just because it was either knee jerk or you heard somebody say it, I'm going to double down and I'm just going to talk about how great they are. So Connor Bedard is the best player in the NHL and Caleb Williams is the best quarterback in the NFL. And you cannot tell me otherwise. Boom. Doubled down.
Mm-hmm.
Doubled down. Meatball sauce all over me. I got the crock pot going.
You got the tub outside over the burner.
Ugh. It just I get tired of it.
Yep.
Like I'm a realist. I can watch and be a fan of a player and talk about how good they are, but still find the room for where they need to grow and not everybody can do that. And it just makes me angry that, and it's one thing, like, if you're like, you know what, I haven't watched enough of them. What I did see didn't look very good, but, looking at the stats, clearly he must have had much better games than this. I'll read more about it or listen to somebody that watches that player more. This is not the way it works. Usually, like, well,
Right.
I saw him on 4 minutes of a game, and I'm making my judgment on him the entire career.
Yep. Yep. And that's what sports fans tend to do.
Ugh. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Nope. I've said my piece.
Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends to help grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter/X, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.